All right, so 102C, this one's kind of tricky because I don't know that we've seen this yet. Have we seen one yet that just had a minus in front of a parenthesis with no number there? No, are you with us? Yep. Have we seen one like this yet? This might have been our first one. I'm actually gonna put a number in front of this parenthesis. So anytime you see a parenthesis without a number in front of it, because we're used to taking that number and distributing, right? That's what we've been doing, but there's no number here. What number can we always put in front of a variable or in front of a parenthesis? We can always put a 1 in front of it. So I'm gonna put a 1 in front, but it's not a 1 in this case, it's actually a negative 1 because of that minus sign. So my first step here is I'm gonna take this negative 1 and distribute it into that parenthesis. Everything else stays the same. The 2 is going to stay there, and the equals and the 3y are going to stay the same. I just need to distribute that negative 1. So negative 1 times y is negative 1y, and negative 1 times positive 2 is negative 2. So there's my next step. We feeling okay about that? All right. Before we go any further, we should go through our steps for simplifying. So we take care of parentheses. That's always step 1. Step 2 is combine like terms. Do you see any like terms we can combine? Yes, please. Like terms. I see a 2 and a negative 2 that are on the same side of the equation. And they don't have y's in them, so they are like terms. We can combine them. What do I get when I combine positive 2 and negative 2? 0. They go away. So those are going to cancel. So now I just have negative 1y equals 3y. This is kind of a weird problem. I can see why that person emailed me. All right, and then the last thing we do before we start solving is we take care of variables on both sides. We have a variable on both sides. We don't want that. We can't solve like this. So I need to either get rid of the negative 1y or the 3y. Which one do you want to get rid of? No wrong choice here. What do you want to get rid of, the negative 1 or the 3? Negative 1? Okay. So minus 1y, I'll do the opposite, which would be plus 1y. Do it on both sides. And that'll make that go away. Now, when everything goes away, there's still something that we got to write there. What do we write? How do we write nothing mathematically? Not 1, 0. And 1y plus 3y is 4y. Now, a lot of people here would think that, oh, this is one of those no solution ones, but we can still keep going. We want to get this y by itself. Right now, it's multiplying by 4. We can get rid of multiplication by dividing. So I'll divide by 4 on both sides. And 0 divided by anything always has the same answer. 0 divided by anything is 0. So my final answer is y equals 0. Thank you. All right, now a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people, when they get to this step here, they'll say no solution. And what they're probably thinking of is, remember, we have a rule that we cannot divide by 0. Right? We can't have a 0 on the bottom of division or on the bottom of the fraction. That doesn't work. But we're allowed to have 0 on the top of the fraction. We can divide 0 by anything we want to. The answer is just 0. So this doesn't work. If you ever find yourself dividing by 0, that's when there's no solution. But if you got 0 divided by something, that works. If this were a test or a quiz, I would check these. Did you guys practice checking your answers while you were doing your homework? No. Take this opportunity and do it right now. The original equation was 2 minus parentheses, and it was y plus 2. I'm going to leave the y out. Y plus 2 equals 3 times y, and I'm leaving that y out also. And what do we think y is? I think it's 0. So put a 0 here and a 0 here. And if we end up getting the same number on both sides of this equal sign, then our answer is correct. So let's simplify over here. This is easy. 3 times 0 is just 0. Here I've got 2 minus, and what is 0 plus 2? Well, that's just 2. I think this is going to be true, right? Because 2 minus 2 is 0. We get 0 equals 0. That's the same number on both sides. Boom, it's equal. We're good. All right. Any questions on 102? One hundred two C rather. We're gonna do 102 B also. All right, 102 D. This one, I'm super glad that I got a question about this one because this problem has one of the most common mistakes in algebra. I see my students do this all the time, especially in Algebra 1, but I've seen pre-calc students make this same mistake. Did anybody start this problem and were tempted to go ahead and add that 3 plus 4 together and make a 7? Was anybody tempted to do that? That would be the common mistake. And if you're doing that, you're doing a right step. The right first step is to, well, a correct step is to combine like terms. However, these are not like terms because this 4 is multiplying by something and the 3 is not multiplying by anything. So we can't put them together because they're not like terms. Thank you. So we're not going to start with that. What we need to do first is always get rid of parentheses. We have parentheses. We got to get rid of those before we start doing anything else. There's a 4 in front of this parenthesis. We're going to distribute that 4 into there. Everything else is going to stay the same. The 3 and the equals in the 159 stay. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 1 is 4. And we've got that. I'd put it in your bag. Just because if I see it again, I got to do the whole paper bag thing too. Next up, combine like terms. I got 3 and a 4 here. That's a 7. I'm going to put it right here. The 4x is going to stay. And then a couple more quick steps of algebra to finish it up, and I'll leave the last couple steps up to you. While we're here, you guys have your packets out? You guys have your packets out? I want to put something in my packet. And I'm going to put it under summary of solving equations here. We'll come back and we'll answer other homework questions in just a moment. And I believe we put this in our chapter 1 packet as well, but I want to put it in here as well. I'm going to give you 3 steps that if you can remember to do these 3 things before you start solving equations, your life is going to be so much easier. We went over this in geometry. My geometry students and I went over this 2 or 3 times at the beginning of the year this year, just to remind them, because people were doing extra steps when they were solving equations they didn't need to. Okay, so if you can do these 3 things first to simplify before you start solving, your life's going to be easier. You're going to end up doing less work. So I'm going to call this simplifying. I'm going to say simplify before you solve. There are 3 things that you want to do to simplify before you start solving. Technically, you can do these in any order that you want to, but if you do them in this order, usually it means less steps. So number 1 is get rid of parentheses. How do we get rid of parentheses? We've learned two ways to get rid of parentheses. You guys remember? It's actually on our previous page. So one way is to use the box, right? The rectangle. We had parentheses here. We turned it into something without parentheses here. And the other way was to distribute. So I'm going to make myself a note here since that's what these are. So we get rid of parentheses by distributing or doing a box. That's terrible. All right, so you sit down to solve an equation. If you see parentheses, that's the first thing you want to take care of. Can you put that phone in your bag, please? Okay. All right, step 2. Second thing you always want to do, and this my students often forget to do this before they start solving. This is why they end up doing extra steps usually. Combine like terms. So, for example, if you had a 2x plus 5 plus 3x equals to 6 minus x plus 2. You've got like terms here and here that you can put together, and you got like terms here and here that you can put together. You would want to do that. This would be 5x plus 5, and this would be 8 minus x. Again, my students sometimes forget to do this, and it causes them extra steps. And it's okay to do extra steps, right? But you all know that the more steps we do, the more likely we are to make mistakes and not catch them. So, all right, and then number 3 is get rid of variables. We can only have a variable on one side. So I'm just going to write variables on both sides. So we could use this as our example right here. If you had 5x plus 5 equals 8 minus 1x, there are variables on both sides. You can't solve an equation. You can't get a variable by itself if there's variables in 2 places. You got to deal with them. And you want to deal with that before you start solving, before you start adding and subtracting numbers from both sides. You want to deal with your variables. In this case, would you be looking to get rid of that 5x, or would you be getting rid of the negative 1x? I would probably get rid of the negative 1x too, but you could get rid of either one of them. It doesn't really matter. If I were doing this, I would go plus 1x on both sides to cancel those out so that I would have 6x plus 5 equals 8. So before you start doing anything else, you can get in the habit of checking for these 3 things really quickly. Okay. By the end of this year, I'm hoping to have it tattooed in your brain. Look for parentheses, look for like terms, look for variables on both sides. Once all those things are done, then start getting the variable by itself. but not until you've done those three things, okay? And sometimes you don't have to do, like, sometimes we've done a lot of equations that didn't even have parentheses in them, so we were able to skip step one quite a bit. All right, that'll be our big notes for today. What other questions do you guys have from homework? Anything else we can talk about from the homework assignment? We good? All right. So let me